Hoskins, I want the echo shielding deployed on the cab or the transport as well as on the back.
Voss ordered as he closely monitored every movement of the transport. Unit 37, Unit 38, and various other screens all at the same time. Hoskins replied,
"Yes, sir. Do you really think this is a trap?"
I don't know. It very well could be. We won't know until we hear from Unit 37. All we can do is be prepared for the worst.
Voss replied, waving his hands to move through several screens on his glasses, sweat beginning to bead up on his forehead.
"Shields on, Commander,"
Hoskins stated, the sweat starting to show on his brow as well. Hoskins was clearly concerned. Hoskins was neither a fighter nor a courageous man, so the very thought of a possible trap had him to the point of almost soiling himself. Despite his fear, Hoskins held firm and continued to follow Voss's orders.
"This one sure has the Commander spooked,"
Hoskins thought. It didn't help the situation that Hoskins could tell that Voss was deep in thought, trying to make more sense out of the situation. Voss, meanwhile, had the same serious look on his face that he always had. Mulling over the situation in his mind, Voss thought,
if they are indeed under some sort of mind control, the echo shielding will protect us from personal weapons fire. We can keep them isolated, but wouldn't the ghost just have them wait until we got back to base before it did anything? Or maybe it is simply watching where they go, in which case we would just be leading straight back to base. Does that mean that the ghost is watching them now? Is it somehow not detectable by our computers? If that were the case, it would be a first. If it is hiding, there must be a way to find it.
Voss began moving his hands and arms in a fashion similar to that of a music composer, using his various computer layouts from his glasses to conduct sensor sweeps of the area.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Voss thought, looking over the results of the sensor sweeps.
Maybe if I connect to the satellite imaging.
Voss thought as he connected his computer to the Baron Midley satellite network. He began to flail his arms and hands even faster, trying to move between various screens and views of the local area. Voss's obvious increase in activity had Hoskins beginning to worry even more. Despite the fact that Hoskins could not see what Voss was seeing, he was smart enough to realize that whatever it was, Voss wasn't finding any answers that he liked. Hoskins tried not to think about it as he maneuvered the transport into the pickup location for Unit 37. As the transport came to a halt, Hoskins could see Unit 37 getting closer and closer on his screen. Hoskins then opened the echo shield on the back compartment of the transport. Fumbling nervously, he lowered the ramp on the back of the transport. The whole time he watched Voss, hoping for either a confirmation or denial of a trap, but it never came. The comm line opened.
Unit 37 requesting permission to load up,
Sergeant Lewis stated. Voss nodded to Hoskins, giving the go-ahead to let them into the transport. Hoskins came across the comm line and said,
"Sergeant Lewis, your unit is clear to load up."
Roger that.
Sergeant Lewis replied, motioning his men into the back of the transport. Commander Voss looked out the side of his glasses at Hoskins as if to question
why they are following protocol now.
Hoskins looked back at Voss with concern in his eyes and sweat all over his face. The sound of the heavy-powered suits moving into the transport began to reverberate into the front of the transport.
I can't figure out why the sudden change from panic to protocol.
Voss thought to himself, watching Unit 37 like a hawk watches its prey. It was only natural that the constant appearance of the GET team at every ghost sighting around the world, that the power-hungry world leaders would leave the ghost phenomena to Baron Midley as the tension between them escalated. It was only a few years into the all-out Pangeo War that the world powers began to realize the possible dangers of the ghosts, but by that time, no one even came close to the specialization in ghosts that Baron Midley had achieved. It was at this point that the war ceased, but the reliance on Baron Midley remained. As such, 5 years after the ceasefire, Baron Midley would still be called on. This time, they were called to the Pan-American Sphere's territory about a possible ghost, the likes of which had only been concocted in the darkest of nightmares. Excerpt from the History of Byron Midley, Better Business Inquirer magazine. Sarah and Corporal Haroldson kept watch on Unit 37 until they made it out of sight. Sarah couldn't help but wonder,
why is there no chatter in the Unit 38 comm line? Why did Norman and Voss ignore the warning about it being a trap? They must already have a plan.
Voss continued closely monitoring the troopers of Unit 37 for any signs out of the ordinary.
So far, the only thing that is different is the lack of used ammunition and a slight lapse in protocol. While neither of these things is good behavior for a unit of troopers, I can't say that it is punishable offense either.
Voss thought to himself, swapping between screens from the transport and the area outside. He waved his hand again, opening a new screen to check the biometrics of the troopers.
All of their stats are elevated, but that is what one would expect. Maybe if I cross-reference their vitals now with the vitals from their last PT exam, maybe that will tell me something.
He thought, opening more screens to compare as much as he could as fast as he could.
Everything is within an acceptable parameters based on their most recent PT exam. Damn, what am I missing?
He thought to himself, startling Huskins as he slammed his fist on his own leg.
Sergeant Lewis, begin debriefing of the situation.
Voss ordered, closing his eyes to remove any distractions from the screen, and carefully listening for any subtle changes or inflections in Sergeant Lewis's story. Voss made sure to directly feed the general comm line into the Unit 38 only comm line as well.
Yes, sir. We dropped at the location as per normal. Protocol, sir. All was quiet. There were fires and fire control was dealing with them. There was no sign of the ghost. We got confirmation of the transport's departure. Then out of nowhere, a huge ball of fire hit the transport. It melted the transport to slag in seconds. No time to get up the echo shielding. We used every type of sensor sweep our suits could do, but there was no sign of life or the ghost. Whew. We searched for the ghost for a few minutes after that. Not finding it, we were hoofing it to the rendezvous point, where you guys were going to pick up your unit. Then we heard you dropping over the comm line and came running.
Sergeant Lewis stated while trying to gather his wind back from the long run. Commander Voss pondered the story for a moment.
Everything he is saying makes sense with the conditions of the troopers. It would also make sense that they would come to us for a pickup if their transport was destroyed. But why not contact HQ rather than us directly? Just a lapse in judgment, perhaps, or maybe a subtle manipulation of judgment. Whatever the case, Sergeant Lewis doesn't seem to be aware of anything. Either way, the echo shielding should keep them in and anything else out once they are loaded up.
Voss thought to himself, opening his eyes. Elemental conditioning and obscuration. Shielding or echo shielding was the brainchild of Dr. Kozue Archive. Using various types of proprietary technology and electrical energy fluctuations, the shielding provides complete protection from any form of attack. The barrier also prevents any form of radio, satellite, or sound from passing through. Physical items are also unable to pass through the barrier. As such, echo shielding must be used cautiously as air does not pass through the shield either. Also, the high energy cost prevents the shield from being implemented constantly. Excerpt from New Journal of Science and Technology, Baron Midley edition. Huskins began the loading procedures for the Unit 37 troopers.
Air circulation and filtration engaged. Power charging ports activated.
Huskins thought as he began checklisting the procedures in his head. Both Voss and Huskins could hear the troopers load up. As each power suit came up the ramp, the transport would shift positions, similar to that of a very large person getting into a compact car. As Voss racked his brain for a solution to the perceived trap, it felt as if time was going in slow motion. The troopers felt as though they were taking hours to get loaded in and settled rather than minutes. Glancing at the time on his glasses, Voss was aware that they were actually loading up very quickly despite how it felt. As the last of the troopers loaded into the back of the transport, both Voss and Huskins looked at each other in complete silence, both with a look of concern on their faces.
Huskins, reactivate the echo shielding for the back of the transport.
Voss commanded, closing all the extra screens he had opened, hoping to find answers.
Shield activated.
Huskins replied, lifting the ramp and closing the back door.
Now, return to base, Huskins.
Voss ordered, intensely watching the view of the back compartment. Sergeant Norman heard over the comm line.
Unit 37 loaded up. We are returning to base. We will return for your pickup at the designated time and place.
From Commander Voss.
Roger that, 38 out.
Norman replied, cutting the comm line between him and Voss. Sergeant Norman then seamlessly began giving orders.
Begin fanning out and search the area for the ghost and survivors. Make sure you stay in visual range of one another.
The troopers began their search for the flame dancer. Routine chatter would come across the comm line.
Sector 1, clear.
Sector 2, clear.
The chatter was all routine. There was no sight of the flame dancer. There was also no signs of life. Sarah thought to herself,
There is nothing. No ghost, no civilians, no plants. Just ash and things that don't burn. Even the metal from street signs and cars is little more than slag on the ground.
the major thought that then came to her mind was,
What kind of intense fire would it take to incinerate bones and reduce the city to ash so quickly?
the silence was eerie. There were no screams. There were no engines. There were no animals. Nothing but a gentle breeze carrying the smoke and ash around. The occasional leftover flame was found, slowly smothering to embers with a faint red or orange glow. It felt like time was standing still. What felt like hours had only been mere minutes. All of the troopers could feel their anxiety on the rise, and with good reason. This level of destruction had not been seen since the last use of nuclear weapons in World War II. The level of destruction could be compared to Hiroshima, but in truth, it was much worse. Hiroshima left some structures standing. This incident left almost nothing. A vast desert of ash and soot was all that remained of Pasadena. Even more hair-raising to the troopers was the lack of bodies. Over 200,000 people and not a body, bone, or shred of personal effects. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. She was genuinely afraid because she knew that if the flame dancer did come, there was nothing she could do to stop it. Even worse, she had no clue what this foe from another world even looked like. She could be looking straight at it and not even know it. Sarah began to stay herself mentally. She repeated to herself,
I mustn't be afraid. Fear compromises good judgment. Good judgment saves your life.
She repeated this phrase over and over in her mind. It was a saying her father had taught her ever since she was little. Sarah began to calm down a little as she repeated the phrase over and over again. Then the familiar woman's voice from earlier whispered again,
It's here.
Sarah turned to face the front of the formation. Just as Sarah turned to the front of the formation, the silence was shattered with the sounds of gunfire and shouting across the comm line. It was Slater. From the front of the formation, Slater shouted across the comm line,
Fireball incoming.
Sarah heard the woman's voice again.
It's going after the transport.
Ibarra shouted, pointing toward the fireball.
Incoming projectile.
Raising his rifle towards the fireball, Norman shouted.
Open fire.
Several troopers had begun to open fire at the target, which looked like a ball of fire traveling at great speed. However, rather than striking the troopers like a normal fired projectile, the object swerved up and over their formation at the last second. Norman shouted across the comm line,
Troopers about face and begin pursuit.
All the troopers did a complete about-face and began chasing the target. Norman shouted over the comm line.
Watch for friendly fire. Keep your eyes on the target.
Ibarra then came across the comm line.
Target doesn't show on sensors.
Sarah, despite her fear, turned and began running after the fireball, weapon drawn. Sarah had a natural speed and grace to her run, leading to her easily outrunning the rest of the troopers in pursuit. Weapon blazing, Sarah fired shot after shot at the ball of fire with no visible effect. Sarah tried switching to thermal imaging, but it was like staring into an inferno with no ability to make out the shape of the target. She then switched to infrared with the same result. She flipped through view after view with still no way to pinpoint what was within the blazing ball of flame. Despite her speed of travel, Sarah was definitely losing ground on the fireball at an incredible rate.
There is no way I can catch this thing.
Sarah thought to herself as she changed out her empty magazine for a fresh one.
You know where it is going.
The woman's voice whispered again. Sarah shouted across the comm line.
It's going after the transport.
Commander Voss then came across the comm line.
Troopers, give chase. We are going to circle around and come on an intercept course with you.
Voss then looked over at Huskins and asked,
How long until intercept?
Huskins said with a frightful look on his face.
Less than 10 seconds. We won't even have time to circle around before it is on us.
Shit.
Voss shouted, opening a comm line to send out a mayday to headquarters and all units in the area.
Unit 38, Flame Dancer, Inga.
The comm line crackled loudly before going dead. Sarah, watching the vitals of her unit, saw both Huskins and Voss's biometrics flatline right before her eyes.
No!
She shouted as she ran even harder.
We didn't make it in time.
She thought as she kept running well ahead of the others. After about 5 minutes of running and a little over a kilometer of travel, she could see something burning off in the distance. Norman was shouting over the comm line.
Commander Voss, status report. Can you read me? Commander Voss, come in.
Sarah slowed her pace to a jog and then finally a walk before coming across the comm line.
Sergeant, they are gone. The transport has been completely incinerated. There is nothing left here. No sign of the Flame Dancer either.
Norman ordered Sarah.
Private, secure the area and we will be there shortly.